if they're open over the next 2.5 years to listening to stakeholders on both the business and not-for-profit and labor side, and looking at the actual evidence of what happens over the next 3 years, and perhaps not going to a $15 minimum wage, then that's good. That's fine. That would be good governance. It seems like that's not what's going to happen here. What I care about is about poverty reduction as a whole. And what I see missing from this is any tie to a poverty reduction strategy. They've talked about it. I also see a lack of evidence in terms of what the impact of this is going to be. Why $15 instead of 16, instead of 14? What's the impact going to be? They don't seem to know the answers to those questions. They seem to have picked a number based on a US-based campaign for a $15 minimum wage. And let's be really clear. Canada and the United States are very different jurisdictions. Canada has a very different social safety net than the United States has. We have public health care. The United States doesn't. There are many differences between Canada and the US that I think we need to take into account. So I think there are other options that we need to consider. The Alberta Family Employment Benefit, for example, is one tool that we could use to help the people who need help. My worry is that we're going to have unintended consequences of an increase to minimum wage, that minimum wage increases are a blunt instrument that don't in fact necessarily help the people who need help. What matters is not that you get $15 an hour. What matters is how many $15 hours you work. So if companies pull back the number of hours, or they reduce your benefits, or in fact they lay off staff because Alberta small business is going out of business as a result of increased costs, have we really solved this problem? That's my concern, is I haven't seen the evidence, and I've asked for it in the House, and that was a question that came up here today. So that's my big concern. Poverty reduction as an overall strategy is really important for this province. What would a living wage look like? Let's not forget, a living wage, $15 an hour is not a living wage in most of this province. So we're still not getting there if the goal is poverty reduction. So my worry is this is something that's been hastily deployed. They haven't thought it through. And there is an opportunity here, if they really do in fact listen and look at the data that comes in over the next number of years, to make sure that we're not having, we're in fact helping those who need help, and we're not having unintended consequences as a result of a minimum wage increase. So that take questions.
What would you say would be the living wage?
So there's a lot of good work on this. Calgary, it's $17.28 an hour. In Fort McMurray, it's over $20 an hour. In some rural communities, it's $15 to $17 an hour. But in most places in this province, it is in fact more than 15. So, and you know, there are people who need a living wage, who probably should get more than 15 if we really do want to look at that. A well-designed living wage, or also sometimes called a reverse income tax, in fact helps those who need help and doesn't create a disincentive to hire. It doesn't disproportionately hurt Alberta small business. And that's my big worry here. My big worry is, in fact, we end up with more unemployment. We see an overall elevation of wages across the board, and that, in fact, could have the reverse impact here. We could actually end up hurting people at the low end of the income scale more than we help them.
What do you think of the minister saying that, you know, the issue of possibility of layoffs is fear-mongering?
You know, I think, I would hope that she's open to listening and open to actually evaluating the real data that we see here over the next number of years. You know, raising it up to 11.20, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's a reasonable step. I think that's fine, but let's look at the impact that that has, and if they look at going to another step, that they're willing to, along the way, say, you know what, the data shows that we're actually not having the impact that we wanted. Maybe there's a different strategy here. We've heard the minister say repeatedly it's $15 an hour. Why? Because it's $15 an hour, because it was a campaign promise. And frankly, I think that's the wrong answer. I think we need some nuance to this issue. We need some data-driven decisions, because what I care about is helping people in poverty, making sure that people who are at the low end of the income scale, and all of the reasons that that exists, are addressed. And that includes public education. It includes making sure we deal with addictions and mental health, making sure we deal with abuse. Those are all systemic issues that contribute to poverty. And I'm not seeing that this $15 minimum wage is in any way in a broader context of poverty reduction. And that, to me, is what really matters.
Should they break their promise then?
You know, and I would have a great deal of respect for this government if 2 years from now they said, you know what? The data shows that we're actually increasing unemployment amongst a vulnerable population because Alberta small business is no longer hiring. So, you know, we're going to pull that back. I would be the first to stand up here in front of you and praise the government for doing that, because that's good governance, that's good management. And that, I think, is what Albertans expect from their government, and it's been lacking in this province for a very long time.